There is a massive misconception that most people still believe today, that the dinosaurs were wiped out because a giant asteroid crushed them. The truth is, the dinosaurs standing right at ground zero were actually the lucky ones. They vaporized in a fraction of a second. There was no pain. Their brains didn't even have time to register that the world was ending. What actually killed the dinosaurs, what wiped this mighty empire off the face of the earth, was tens of thousands of times more terrifying than the impact itself. For the dinosaurs that survived that initial strike, the gates of hell had just opened.
Let's roll back the clock 66 million years. It was a peaceful morning like any other. The sun was shining on dense fern forests. A triceratops had its head down, grazing quietly. In the distance, a massive T-Rex was patrolling its territory. Up above, pterosaurs painted beautiful arcs across the sky. Not a single creature on Earth knew that death had already locked onto them. Right at this moment, in the cold vacuum of space, a massive rock, 6 to 9 miles wide, was hurtling toward our blue planet at 12 miles per second. What does that speed actually mean? It is 60 times faster than a speeding bullet. It could fly from London to New York in under 5 minutes.
3 hours until impact. On the vast plains of North America, a herd of Alamosaurus, the largest land animals of their time, was on the move. At 70 feet long and weighing 30 tons, they had to devour thousands of pounds of vegetation every single day. A mother had just laid a clutch of eggs. She had no idea they would never hatch.
20 minutes until impact. The sky began to change color. The clear blue faded into a bizarre, terrifying shade of crimson. Ancient birds suddenly stopped singing, flapping their wings in absolute panic. The dinosaurs froze. They stretched their long necks, looking around in confusion. Instinct told them something was deeply wrong, but their brains couldn't comprehend what was coming. 1 minute until impact. A streak of light tore across the sky, growing larger and more blinding by the second. It was brighter than 1,000 suns. Millions of dinosaurs hundreds of miles away looked up, and their retinas were instantly burned away. They were left completely blind, roaring into the void.
And then the Earth shattered. The asteroid slammed into the shallow waters of the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico. The energy released was equal to detonating 10 billion Hiroshima atomic bombs all at once. The most powerful nuclear weapon ever created by humans, the Tsar Bomba, would be nothing but a grain of sand compared to this. The ocean water at the epicenter didn't even have time to boil. It instantly vaporized into nothingness. The Earth's crust was torn open like wet paper. Billions of tons of pulverized rock, mixed with molten lava, were blasted into space by a shockwave that reached 100 miles high.
5 seconds after impact, every living thing within a 900-mile radius was turned to dust. Not burned, vaporized. Not a single bone remained. Like I said earlier, these were the lucky ones.
2 minutes after impact, a supersonic shockwave blasted outward. The sheer force was so catastrophic, it literally peeled the skin off any living creature in its path. 30-ton dinosaurs were violently thrown into the air like rag dolls. Forests were snapped in half, and the air itself turned into a moving wall of fire. 30 minutes after impact. This is when the true nightmare began. The sky started falling. Over 80,000 cubic miles of rock and debris that had just been ejected into space were now being pulled back by gravity. As they re-entered the atmosphere, friction turned them into glowing white-hot fireballs. The planet was battered by a relentless rain of fire that lasted for days. Every forest on Earth ignited, and there was no escaping a wildfire when the fuel was constantly falling from the sky. Even in Mongolia, 8,000 miles away from the crater, surface temperatures skyrocketed from 85 degrees to 120, 150, and finally peaked at over 300 degrees Fahrenheit. In this massive global furnace, survival was measured in seconds.
A few days later, the fires finally began to die down, but relief never came. According to a 2023 study published in the journal Nature, the impact generated 2 trillion tons of silicate dust. This colossal cloud of soot and ash rose up and blanketed the entire atmosphere like a thick, pitch-black curtain. The sun vanished entirely. The Earth went from a global furnace to a deep freeze. Global temperatures plummeted by nearly 30 degrees Fahrenheit. The planet officially entered a nuclear winter. Plunged into darkness for nearly 2 years, plant life could no longer photosynthesize. The forests withered and died. Ocean algae experienced massive die-offs. And when the foundation crumbles, the whole house comes down. The global food chain completely collapsed. First went the massive herbivores. Wandering through blackened, charred landscapes, starving and exhausted, they eventually collapsed. Their deaths provided a temporary feast for the carnivores. But soon, the rotting meat ran out too. The T-Rex, the great king of the land, was now staggering in sheer desperation. Its majesty was gone, replaced by a brutal, blinding instinct to survive. They turned on each other, slaughtering their own kind for a scrap of spoiled meat before dropping dead from sheer starvation. Deep in the oceans, oxygen levels plummeted. Giant marine reptiles that had ruled the seas for tens of millions of years suffocated, their bodies drifting aimlessly on the surface. This is what haunts scientists the most. The time between the death of the first dinosaur and the final breath of the last wasn't just a few days or months. It was an agonizing, drawn-out torture that lasted for tens of thousands of years. Tens of thousands of years consumed by starvation, darkness, and absolute despair. But life always finds a way. Deep underground, in rock crevices and muddy swamps, a few small, unassuming creatures managed to dodge the apocalypse. Insects, amphibians, and most importantly, early mammals no bigger than rats. Thanks to their tiny size, they barely needed any food to survive. They huddled in the dark, nibbling on rotting roots, patiently waiting. Decades passed. The dust finally began to settle. The sun, weak but persistent, pierced through the thick clouds. The ice melted. Rain washed over the blackened earth, waking up seeds that had been sleeping deep beneath the ash. The earth took a breath once again. And those tiny mammals, the ones that used to scurry and hide in the shadows of the mighty dinosaurs, confidently stepped out of their dark burrows. The reign of the great reptiles was over. The age of mammals had officially begun.
More than 60 million years after that doomsday, one branch of those mammals stood up on 2 legs. They learned to harness fire, craft tools, invent languages, and became the new masters of this planet, us.
So, as you can see, that asteroid didn't destroy life. It was simply a reset button that rebooted the Earth's entire ecosystem. If that rock had missed our planet by just a fraction of a degree, if the dinosaurs had never been wiped out, what would our world look like today? Would humanity even have had the chance to exist?